welcome, first of all, everyone. And if you registered for this event through Eventbrite, we'll have your email and your name in our kind of like database. So if you like attended this entire event, you'll get that volunteer hours for today. So like roughly 1 hour, and you'll be in our database. So whenever you want it, contact us and we can give it to you. And if you continue to come to our future events, we'll also keep updating your volunteer hours to each event that you come to. You also get a certificate of participation for coming to this if you signed up through our Eventbrite link. And yeah, if you have any questions that come up anytime, you can use the chat or you can directly message any of our speakers or me, however you want. And this will be recorded. So if you're not comfortable, like having your screen on, feel free to turn it off. During our presentation session, like kind of like the first half or so, try to keep your camera and mic off. This is to help with connection. And when we get to the Q&A, you're free to turn on your cameras, speak with your mic on, whatever you feel, if you feel comfortable. If not, it's fine. You can kind of have your camera turned off and just ask questions in the chat. And so I'll give a brief overview of CareerBound. So what CareerBound is we're a nonprofit that focuses on helping people find potential careers. So we would provide events like these with kind of professionals, but also we'll also do like joint events with other organizations, kind of to highlight what's going around in our world, how to kind of help you just kind of connect with more people and kind of like learn more and just help you in your career journey. So today we have a partnered event with GapWhiz, and I'm going to give it to Evangelista, and she'll talk to you, kind of introduce herself and talk to you more about them.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. My name is Evangelista. And the four of us, Soraya, Rebecca, Robin, and I are from GapWhiz. Rebecca's actually the founder, so I'll give her a second to explain what GapWhiz is, and then I will introduce myself and go into our presentation.
Hi everyone, nice to meet you all. So excited to get to know you as well throughout the course of this webinar. And our visions align with CareerBound. We're all about supporting students with career opportunities, both work and study opportunities. We understand how challenging it is, especially with COVID. That's made it a lot worse for a lot of students. So we're here to support you and answer any questions you have surrounding work experience, study experiences, and also in the international space as well.
Thank you, Rebecca. So we do have a PowerPoint presentation for you today, and then once I'm done with that, you're welcome to ask us any questions. We all have very different experiences studying, working, interning abroad, so we can definitely help you with those either in the chat or if you want to turn your mic on and ask us. So my background personally is I have bachelor's degrees in Chinese studies and Asian studies. Most of my study abroad and volunteering abroad has been in China. I've also been to Germany and Costa Rica. And currently I'm working on a master's degree in international education. So this is the field I want to go into for a career. So I will share my screen and find the present button. And I have never used Canva before, so please bear with me. Okay. So first we're going to talk a little about the benefits of international experience in general. One big benefit is personal development. So of course, going to a different country, whether it's a country that speaks the same native language as you or not, you'll have new different experiences with culture, with people, different lifestyle, new skills. So it really helps you mature as a person, to become a little more flexible, to learn how to communicate with people who have different backgrounds than you, which is definitely valuable in school and in work environments as the world becomes more interconnected. You also make new connections. You have the opportunity to meet new people, make meaningful friendships. That experience of being abroad together, whether they are, other exchange students from your country, other exchange students from another country, or local people, you really get the opportunity to, meet people from maybe even places you would never expect to meet people from. One of my experiences in China, I had a lot of classmates from Uzbekistan. I had a classmate from Brunei, and these are countries that, I had heard of because I was interested in geography, but they weren't the types of places that I ever expected to meet someone from. So you can definitely make relationships in the most unexpected places. It's also just a lot of fun. You get a lot of memorable, positive experiences, and the summer or maybe year of a lifetime, depending on how long your experience is. You can see all the sights, you can learn a new language, whatever it is that your goal is for going abroad. And it's really enjoyable, and you'll have lots of stories to tell when you get back. It also helps a lot in your career progression. So students who go abroad are 24% more likely to secure a graduate job, which this is a UK report, but the statistics are probably about the same in the US as well. So you are about 25% more likely to get a job after you graduate from college if you've gone abroad. You're also more likely to hold a managerial position 10 years postgraduate, which is from a report published by the European Union. So going abroad, getting that experience can really help you not only secure a job, but to secure a better, higher level job. 74% of US students who studied abroad secured a graduate job. Okay, so there's the US statistic. So it's even higher than in the UK, it seems like. So that's good news for those of us who are in the United States. So the process for gaining international experience, of course, there are lots of different aspects to, the preparation for going abroad. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So a good first step is to connect with current students, alumni, educational charities, anyone who could help talk to you a little bit about the experience, maybe the specific country or school that you're interested in. It's always a good idea to try and find out whether that's through contacting them directly or maybe reading blogs, watching YouTube videos, whatever you can do to kind of get an idea of what it will be like when you get there. If it's possible, it's also good to be able to visit the university or the country for a short trip, especially maybe if they have like an open house or a short summer program. I know in the US, it's kind of hard to do that because we're so far away from most other countries, but if you have the opportunity to go and experience it for yourself before you commit to, a longer program, that's always a good idea. And applying for scholarships, grants, funding support. There are lots of those out there. Some of them are third party, some of them are scholarship programs. There are some really good ones from the US Department of State, including Fulbright. Your university itself may offer some scholarships, whatever you can find to support that, because study abroad can definitely be expensive. And spending your time doing your research on the country's application norms. This is particularly if you are applying for, an internship or a job abroad or a university abroad. Sometimes they may have different requirements or different expectations than what you would be used to in your home country. The way that they perhaps expect you to write an essay. Some countries might ask you to submit a photo where others might not. So it's definitely a good idea to get familiar with what your target school or company is going to expect from you when you submit an application. And if you are looking to intern, work, or volunteer abroad, you definitely want to have a clear goal or focus on the kinds of opportunities that you're interested in. If you're interested in learning a language, if you're interested in, interning in the business world or law or finance, make sure you know what you're looking for, because there are so many programs out there. If you just go in and look for any program at all, you will get yourself overwhelmed. So try to narrow it down with what your interests are and what your passions and goals are, and look for programs that will be conducive to that. And reach out to organizations that offer support or programs. GapWhiz offers support, or any local organizations that might be, help receive international students, help receive international interns or workers, anybody who can help support you in the going abroad process, or once you're there, people who can help you get settled in. Depending on the program, your own program itself might have people dedicated to helping you get housing, helping you find your way around. So definitely look for those kinds of organizations or departments that can help you get settled and get acclimated in your new environment. Also make sure to make a good impression throughout and be a great ambassador for your country. This is not only, this says internship and volunteer abroad, but it's also very important for study abroad. You might be the only person from your home country that people in the host country have ever met before. And their impression of Americans or whatever other country will probably be based on you. So it's a very good idea to, make a good impression, be on your best behavior, and represent your country well. And this can also, of course, increase global job prospects further down the line. If you make a good impression of yourself and your country, people will be more likely to want to hire you or accept you for other opportunities. So working abroad, you should, again, define your roles of interest, but also research long-term travel and visa requirements. Different countries have different requirements for what kind of visa or residence permit you need to apply for to be able to stay, to be allowed to work. For Americans, there are a lot of countries we can travel to without a visa if we're tourists, but if you need working permission, that's sometimes a completely different process. So definitely do your research, and there are some companies out there that will help you apply for the correct visa if you need that. So make sure that you have all of your legal travel requirements sorted out before you go. And connect with professionals. And again, if possible, visit the country for a short-term trip. Learn about what your company is like, the company culture, the work culture in that country, and what you would be experiencing if you go to live there, either for a short-term internship or a long-term job. And of course, again, if you can't visit the country, just maybe do some research online. There are some great resources like the CIA World Factbook that can tell you a lot about what the country is like, and what you could expect when you get there. Work on your CV drafts, application questions, and interview preparation. That's something that GapWhiz can help with. If you need us to look over your resume or help you prepare for an interview, we are happy to do that. You also can just, practice with a parent, practice in front of your mirror, whatever makes you feel the most comfortable, but definitely work on your CV, your resume. A lot of universities have a career center that can support you as well. And try to prepare some answers ahead of time for interview questions that you might expect that a potential employer or a potential university might ask you if you're applying there. And ensure the companies you apply to offer visa sponsorship. You may get a job with a company that expects you to already have a working visa in that country, and maybe you don't. So when you apply to a company, make sure that they will sponsor you to be legally allowed to stay there and work for them. All right, so COVID-19, how to secure an international experience in the COVID-19 era. This, like Rebecca was saying, is definitely something that has made travel and international connections really difficult in the past year or two. So what can you do about that? So you can have a remote experience. And one benefit of a remote experience is that you can have increased productivity. You have a much more flexible schedule. You don't have to spend the time commuting back and forth, and you can use technology to connect to anyone, anywhere, anytime. Share your documents, share your screen, whatever you need to do. You don't have to spend time traveling or spend time finding lunch or whatever it is you need to do. You can be a lot more productive with your time. Another benefit is building your international networks for the future. So like I said, technology can allow you to connect to anyone, anywhere. So just because you're not physically in that place, you can still start building those relationships with people in other parts of your own country and other countries around the world, and have those connections in case you want to apply to travel in the future. You'll have people there who you already know, people who you might be able to list as a reference or a recommender. And that's a really great resource. You also have a better work-life balance. Since remote work, like I said, comes with flexible schedules. A lot of the time you'll be able to decide what you want to work on and when. Of course, you'll always have those deadlines and things, but I know right now I'm doing a remote internship and I do a lot of my work before I go to bed at night. So I'm able to pretty much decide my own schedule most of the time. You also can save a lot of money. Either if you're driving, you don't have to pay for gas. If you would take public transportation, you don't have to pay for public transportation. So you're saving a lot on transport costs. Also, you know, formal professional work clothes and things like that that you normally would have to buy to go into an office. You're saving money on that by staying home and having a virtual experience instead. So how can you secure these remote opportunities? So almost all organizations have made opportunities remote, at least mostly for this year, or at least until a vaccine is rolled out widely. A lot of different countries are at different points in where they're rolling out vaccines. So you can use a lot of traditional platforms to seek these virtual opportunities. Places like LinkedIn or any other job search website will usually have these virtual opportunities for jobs and internships listed within their normal, listings. All right, and how can you get in touch with us for, our information about international opportunities? Like I said, help with resumes and CVs or any questions you might have. So we have an Instagram, a LinkedIn. You can visit our website at GapWhiz.com, or you can shoot us an email, and we will be more than happy to help you with your questions. If you want to sign up for our newsletter, we send that out regularly with different international opportunities that have come up, whether those are for study or internship or jobs. We let you know about those through the newsletter. So if you're interested, please head over to our website and sign up for that. And I think that's my last slide. So let us know if you have any questions.
I think before we jump into questions, we're going to introduce ourselves, well, the rest of us on the panel. Thank you so much, Evangelist, for the presentation. And yeah, just to give a bit of background, I studied biochemistry at University of Oxford. I love traveling, any excuse to travel and just get out of the country, I'm there. And I think from my experience, meaningful travel is the best way to travel, because you build a much deeper connection with the place that you're visiting. When I go on trips to Europe with my friends, it's a completely different experience. Like sometimes we don't even remember like where we visited because we're lost most of the time, on the Uber, whereas when you actually, you know, interacting with the local people, you make more kind of long-lasting memories of the place itself. So yeah, I always love doing meaningful travel, and you know, work opportunities abroad and study opportunities abroad are, you know, the best ways to get some meaningful travel experiences. So I'm actually currently training to be a solicitor, and I know it's different in every country, but in the UK, it's very kind of set. So when you graduate with your first degree, you do 2 extra years and then you start working. So I couldn't really kind of do a 2-year master's abroad. I didn't really have that luxury, but I knew that I wanted to get some work experience abroad or study experience abroad. And so what I did was carry out an exchange program. And of course, there's lots of different ways of doing study abroad that fit with my structure, but you could do a placement abroad. Evangelista went through all of it on slides, but you could do a placement abroad, summer abroad. There's lots and lots of, literally thousands of summer courses that, you know, you can do abroad. If you're studying a language degree in the UK, for example, that's already kind of incorporated in your degree, and with lots of other degrees you can do that, as I'm sure in the US as well. Even when I studied abroad, there were a lot of students that were doing semesters abroad. So there's so many different options. So it's not about, oh, would I find something that fits in with my career structure or my life structure? There's definitely something out there. It's just figuring out, you know, what the different options are and finding what works for you. So yeah, I did it was an extended semester abroad. I was an exchange student, and I was working in a lab at Princeton University during my time there, and I had such a fantastic experience, met so many amazing people. And actually one of the points that, you know, some people mention is that if they go abroad and study abroad or work abroad, they might lose all those connections when they get back to their home country, but it's really not the case at all. It's literally friendship for a lifetime, just like your friends, you know, at home. And social media and Zoom makes the world feel small. And there's lots of my friends that have that I met when I was studying at Princeton, and they've come to visit the UK. One is actually currently in the UK right now. So it's just, you know, friendship abroad for a lifetime, just like every other friendship in your life. So it's really no different. And what I liked about an exchange program, if you're considering that option, is that you kind of get like a safety net, because you get like guided through the whole process by your home institution. They were so supportive with the, you know, visa applications and all the paperwork, applying to labs, every step of the way. So my big advice with that is to develop relationships as early as possible with the I guess key personnel. So I, you know, spoke very early on to the head of the Department of Biochemistry, and he was really supportive, and he put me at ease as well, because obviously it was a very new experience. I'd never studied abroad before that point. And also connecting with alumni as well. I connected with a student who did the exact same thing, who was a year above me, and she's actually stayed in the US to do graduate entry medicine. So that was a good sign for me. If you're staying, then that means it's a great experience. So yeah, just having these connections were really helpful, put me at ease. And you know, you're going to meet so many amazing people and make amazing connections as well. And another benefit of an exchange year abroad is the finance aspect. So you're actually paying tuition to your home institution. So I didn't have to pay any different fees, because I know, of course, it varies from country to country, but you still have your home fees. And in the UK, we've got something called student finance, and they support students. They also offer additional support for students who are incorporating international experience as part of their degree. And you probably have something similar in the US potentially. If I'm sure you definitely do, because most of the scholarships that I've seen is like for US students. So there's definitely something out there for US students. And actually, Evangelista mentioned Fulbright, which is, you know, a great scholarship program for lots of US students. And I briefly looked at doing like a master's abroad when I was kind of like doing my research, and I saw so many scholarships. But if you need help with scholarships, feel free to reach out. But I know that the universities themselves offer a lot of scholarships for students. And actually, when I was there were very few students that I met that were paying the full fees. There were a lot of students that had got some form of financial aid. So especially when it's part of your degree as well, that's another great thing. If you're doing meaningful travel, there's probably someone out there that would want to fund you. So, you know, you don't need to worry about the full cost. The most expensive trips I've done is when I just travel with my friends and I paid all of the fees myself. But, you know, when I'm working abroad or studying, I did an internship in China as well. Yeah, I always got financial support, which is great. But just make sure that you're developing the right relationships early. Preparing early as well really helps to put you at ease. There's of course important deadlines that you have to meet from your home institution. I had to tell them a specific date, what lab that I was going to work at, visa applications and all of that. So it just kind of helps to put you at ease. If you have any questions about exchange year abroad, feel free to reach out. In terms of internships, there's so many programs out there for internships abroad. Most of them are remote because of COVID, but you get, you know, a fantastic experience regardless, as Evangelista highlighted, because you get to build those connections, which you can then capitalize on in the future, especially if you're, I don't know, considering doing law, for example, and you've already, you know, got a legal experience under your belt and you've developed relationships with lawyers in the UK or in Spain. You're definitely going to need that in the future when you actually become a lawyer and you know, interacting with clients and all of that. So it's definitely valuable connections that I would encourage you to, you know, develop and also maintain. So yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to say with that. And I'm gonna move on to Robin or Soraya, whoever wants to jump in first.
I don't mind going first. I will just give you a little background into me and my study abroad experience. So I am Irish. I did my undergrad in psychology in University College Dublin, and I am most likely, I'm in the air at the moment between like what's going to happen next year, but at the moment I've accepted an offer for a master's in race, ethnicity and conflict in Trinity. So my like dream was to continue the goal of like studying abroad again, but I'll just see, because COVID has, you know, made that a little bit more tricky. But in my third year of the undergrad, I studied abroad in America. So I went to the University of Connecticut. And yeah, it was honestly just a really transformative experience for me. And I don't know if there's anybody on this Zoom meeting right now that is like considering it, or is maybe a little bit hesitant because maybe they've never left the country, or like, you know, like studying abroad is intimidating and scary to you. I would highly encourage you to do it, because that was me. You know, kind of 2-3 years ago, I knew I wanted to study abroad, but the thought of going to America or Australia or New Zealand was very intimidating, and I had never lived away before. I'd traveled abroad and I've been to lots of different countries in Europe, and I've had lots of holidays and experience abroad like that, but I had never, you know, lived in another country for a year. And I also went by myself, not knowing anybody. And it's great if you have somebody that you know is going, you know, if you can go with a friend, but don't let that put you off. If you don't know anybody, it's, you know, it's maybe a little bit more challenging, but in the best way possible, because you really do have to push yourself to get involved in like social situations and really like chatting to people and making plans with people and just really being more active and involved. I know for me anyway, like I was a lot more involved in UConn university life and campus life than I was back home. Like university for me in Ireland was just kind of like, you know, go in for your lectures, go home. Like there wasn't too much hanging around. Like it was just such a different experience than going to the States and having like a basketball arena on campus and like this massive like recreation center, and all the like facilities were just next level, like football stadiums, and going to like all the sports games and like having a core group of international friends. Like it's just, you don't get those experiences like outside of working abroad or studying abroad. Like I don't know when I would ever have the chance to have, you know, Dutch, Australian, British, French, German friends like all in the one group. Like it is so valuable. And like every interview that I've had for jobs this year, it always comes up about my study abroad experience. And it's so nice because it's something that like I love speaking about. So immediately the employer is thrilled that you've studied abroad because it shows that, you know, you're resilient, you like to challenge yourself, you work well with others, you have international exposure. So, you know, that diversity of thought and opinions and being in a new culture, meeting new people, like that is so, so valuable to an organization, particularly global organizations, because they want to know that you can work with people who don't come from your country and that you're, you know, open and friendly and that you have really strong communication skills. So it's massively, massively beneficial in terms of like soft skills. And those are really things that like you have to work on, you know, you don't just naturally have soft skills, like everybody has to work on them. And it was just like, I love talking about my study abroad experience, and it's so great that it comes up in interviews because I think what employers want to see is your passion and how genuine you are, and it makes you then more comfortable as well because you're able to talk about something that just, you know, it flows naturally. There's no preparation needed. You're just talking about a, you know, really positive experience you had. And definitely for me, like particularly just that year abroad, I had the freedom to pick classes outside of my discipline. So I got to explore like cognitive science and sociology, communications, and that really developed me like academically as a student. And I think it prepared me really well for going forward, being able to sort of diverge into a different discipline. So I'm now moving from psychology to a master's in sociology. And my study abroad experience just completely informed my thesis for final year. I just took a really, really inspirational class about racism, and it just like completely transformed my view of the world. And it was just so wonderful and eye-opening, and I just wouldn't change it for the world. Like I just, yeah, I can't encourage you more to just really, really consider pushing yourself to, you know, do a summer abroad, do a few weeks abroad, like get any international exposure that you can, because even if it's remote, like I promise you, it's so worth it. It's so beneficial. And yeah, if you have any questions for me, I would love to answer. If any of you are considering studying abroad in Ireland, you should. I'll show you around. But yeah, please do ask any questions.
Great, thank you. I think I might just go next then, as I think I'm the last one to talk. So my name's Soraya. I am Austrian and Iranian. However, for both countries, I'm considered a foreigner because I never really grew up in either. Because of my parents' work, I've grown up in Hong Kong, Denmark, Singapore, Vienna for maybe 2 years, and I studied in London. So I went to University College of London and I studied architecture. So I have a BSc in architecture. And now, after a quick year in California to visit my family who are now living there, I'm now back working as an architectural designer in the UK, hoping to go back to the US though, because I really enjoyed it. It gave me the biggest culture shock actually from all the countries I've been to. It was really interesting. But yeah, I am actually an applicant for the Fulbright scholarship. I feel like we might as well be sponsored by them at this point, as all of us have talked about them. But yeah, it's been a good process so far. I've got my interview soon, but it's a very easy process. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. So given that everyone's talked about the benefits of applying abroad, I think I don't need to talk much more about that, but I thought I might mention the application process for some of the universities. So as I was at an international school, I had a lot of friends applying to the US, the UK, different countries in Europe. So, you know, Rotterdam, TU, Wien, some of them are in Tsinghua University. So I just thought I might just kind of compare the processes a little bit. So I'm assuming that most of you would be looking at the UK and the US. And I think a main difference between these two universities when you're applying is that the UK is a lot more academics oriented. The people who are looking at your applications will be experts in the field you're looking at. Whereas in the US, it's the, how do you call it? It's the it's a specific department looking at applicants. So they're more interested in how you're going to contribute to the university life. So the UK is more specific, the US is more holistically based, which means when you're writing your personal statements, I mean, things that both have in common is you should never mention it's my passion. You should never say that you've wanted to pursue it since you were little because of my grandma, because of my father, because these are things they've all heard before. It's just the way you can stick out. For example, the UK personal statement is you could maybe mention why you're interested in the program. If it's career specific, make sure to highlight the program rather than the future job, because the future job might look very different to your study. Make sure you mention what you studied. So for example, the AP classes or whatever kind of classes you've chosen, that they're mention them and say how they're relevant to what you're doing. So for example, if you're doing medicine and you're doing biochem, mention that. Even if you're doing English, even if you're interested in medicine, just maybe mention how that could be relevant to what you're pursuing. Also mention the activities. So for the UK, mention the activities that are again relevant. Otherwise, it might dilute the essay, and approach it more like you would a professional document. For the US, I'm very aware it's very much story-based, and you kind of have to write about your experience and how they formed you as a person. So make sure you don't do that for the UK admissions, because they're not as much interested in that. But please do mention it if you're applying to the US and how this as well might develop you and make you a great addition for the university. For US admissions, European admissions are again completely different, because the UK and the US admissions, they are around December. If you want to apply early to the UK ones, that's more October, especially if you're interested in Oxford and Cambridge. So beware, some of them have very different deadlines. The European ones, all of them, they wait till you finish with your high school diploma. So you're applying around June, July, after you have finished your schooling. So make sure you check out the different universities, because they all have very different deadlines and very different requirements for what you need to have studied. So just make sure you've really read through what you're interested in doing, because I remember I accidentally excluded some choices because I messed up on the country requirements. But yeah, I mean, I really hope you find a fitting place. And if you really have any questions, please feel free to contact any of us. We've all had very different experiences and have studied very different things. So I'm very sure that whatever you might need to ask, one of us is able to answer it somehow. So thank you.
Thank you for it. Your advice was very helpful, and I'm sure your tips helped many people. And so now let's move on to the questions. So if you still haven't submitted any questions, remember to put them in the chat, or you can directly send them to one of our speakers. Right now, let's see, I have a mix of some general and specific questions. So some are directed towards one of you, and some are just if all four of you can give your input, or if it's just if one of you knows how to answer this question more precisely or something, like you can raise your hand, unmute, and answer the question. Okay, so this one is about, because you guys mentioned the visas a little. So I think some students here kind of are in the US and they probably don't really understand the visas to kind of work or study abroad. Can one of you maybe explain it a little bit more? Maybe the restrictions, what the visas allow you to do, the application process, maybe a little?
Sure. So I can start with that since I'm from the US. So basically, you have a passport and a visa, and the passport allows you to leave your home country, and the visa allows you to enter another one. As US citizens, like I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of countries that we're able to enter as tourists for a limited amount of time without needing to apply for a visa, or they'll give you a visa upon arrival. For example, any country in the European Union, you don't need a visa beforehand if you go as a tourist. Costa Rica, you don't need a visa if you're going as a tourist. El Salvador will give you a visa when you get there. They'll take your information and they'll stamp a little sticker into your passport and you're good to go. However, if you want to stay longer, for example, if you're staying for a semester or a year to study, or especially if you're going to work, you can get in a lot of legal trouble for working and earning a salary if you're there as a tourist and you don't have the proper working visa and the proper sponsorship. So definitely, even those countries that you're allowed to physically enter and visit without a visa, you are most likely going to need some sort of visa or other kind of, what's the word? Just not verification. That word is gone right now, but like something that will allow you to work there in that country and earn a salary. So for example, when I went to China and stayed for a year, I needed to get not only a visa, but also a residence permit. So the visa allowed me to enter the country, and it was valid for 30 days. And within those 30 days, I had to go to, in China, it's the office is called the Entry Exit Bureau. So I had to go to the Entry Exit Bureau in the local city where I was studying. I left my passport with them for like a week or two, and they gave me a little slip of paper that, you know, in case I did need to take a train or go somewhere else and I didn't have my passport on me, it said that that office had my passport. And when I got it back, there was another extra little sticker in it that with, you know, my name, my passport number, my visa number that said that I was allowed to stay and I was a student, and it was good for, it was actually good for 4 years, I think. So they had made it as if I was going to stay there for my entire, you know, degree, which I wasn't, but it would have been good for multiple entries. So for example, if I had wanted to go home and visit my family and then come back, I would have been allowed to come back in and continue my studies. But then you also have to be careful when you're done. I was not allowed to return back to China on that visa for other purposes. So, and different countries may have different rules. This is specifically China that I know the most about. So again, like we mentioned earlier, you definitely want to do your research. And there are companies out there that will direct you toward the correct visa and help you apply for it. But you definitely want to make sure that you get the right permissions to be where you are for as long as you need to be.
If I can just add to that, I absolutely agree with everything that Evangelist has said, but also the visa process is probably the simplest and easiest process out of the entire application process for both study and work opportunities. Because once you got accepted, you got the university place, or you got the internship or the workplace, they support you through all of that. There's a you need some documents to, for example, prove that you are going to carry out work there or you're going to study there. And they provide all of that for you. There's usually someone in their office that will just kind of tell you what you need to do, deadlines and so forth. And also what a lot of companies do is sponsor your visa process. So in general, the longer you're staying in the country, the more expensive your visa would be. But a lot of companies actually sponsor your visa process. So you don't actually need to worry about the visa applications as much from my experience anyway. Once you've got the acceptance, that's pretty much where the work kind of stops.
I might just want to add, so if you've got a study visa, this usually doesn't guarantee that you have a work visa right after school. So be sure to check those. The Fulbright one has a very specific scholarship for some countries. So for example, for me, I'm applying to the Austrian government. So that means that I'm allowed to study in the US. However, on the condition that I have to return back to my home country and work there for 2 years. So be aware of those kinds of conditions, especially when you're applying to different organizations.
Awesome. Thank you all for that information. It was very, very helpful. So our next question is towards Rebecca. So what are the acceptance rates of those internships? Are they really highly competitive?
So acceptance rates for internships international internships actually pretty similar to home internships, and it varies depending on what you're applying for, right? So there's lots of companies, for example, that you can pay thousands of pounds to get you an internship. That's pretty much guaranteed. But in general, if you are getting paid for your time or getting some funding support, it's, the acceptance rate is pretty similar to your home country. There are some industries that are more competitive than others, so it tends to be the corporate. So if you're applying to anything law, banking, consulting related, there's going to be a lot more applicants. Well, from my experience, tends to be a lot more applicants for those roles. So it really varies depending on what you're applying for. But the good thing is that CVs is universal. A good CV in the US is a good CV in the UK and every other country. So as long as you got, your information structured correctly in your CV, you know how to write a good cover letter, you don't need to be worried about the fact that your cover letter or your CV is tailored to a US company, and you might be less likely to get accepted if you're applying to a UK or a Spanish company, for example. It's, a pretty universal standard, so you don't need to worry about that.
Awesome, thanks. Okay, so our next question is to Robin. You mentioned like skills that you will gain from the international experience. What skills do you think are useful for kind of like excelling kind of abroad? And also like, what do you think are kind of like skills that you specifically gain from being like the international experience?
That is a great question. Okay, let me think. For me personally, I would say like maybe two of the biggest ones were like confidence and independence. So, moving away from home and having to do my own laundry, if I got sick, having to go to the doctor, if I needed like, I didn't have anyone else that I could just say, like, hey mom, can you like drop me to my friend's house? Or like, I need to pick up something from the pharmacy, can you take me there? Like all these types of things, you have to figure everything out for yourself. And that was something that was very valuable to me anyway, just to have that sense of like, you're out there in the world, you've got the freedom to do whatever you want to do. Your time is your own. Like it was very, very freeing. And I think that yeah. And then I think as well, so like, yeah, confidence was huge for me anyway. That's not to say that I wasn't like a shy person, before I left. I loved being social and like going out with friends, and but I think when you're in that situation, it's like starting all over again. And it felt like being back in first year of college, where it's like, oh, I don't know anyone, like nothing feels familiar, everything is new. And it was just having to really push yourself to get involved, because if you don't do that, then like you get out of the experience what you put into it. So like you really do have to try to make plans and be social and like make those lasting friendships. So I think being more comfortable outside of your comfort zone, that's definitely something that I have gained from studying abroad, because now it's like, oh well, I've done something that's really scary and I did it and I was successful, and I'm a lot more open to new experiences now because of that. And I think that's definitely something that employers would value, because if you're coming into a business, you're starting at the bottom, you don't know the way they work, you don't know your team yet, you don't know really what the culture is like, and there is a lot of adaptations, and you have to be resilient and be confident and friendly and a team player. So if you have experience then collaborating with students in group projects from study abroad, and you've been working with American students or other international students, then that is super applicable to working in an organization where you're joining a team. And yeah, I think just that sort of like global experience, and I definitely do think like team building, communication, resilience, adaptability, particularly for me anyway, just because COVID hit like right in the middle of the study abroad. So I had to like pack up my bags and leave the country in like a day and then finish the year out with like online university. So I'm just like, I make sure that like employers know I'm super resilient. But yeah, I think those are maybe the key ones. But yeah, I would just highly, highly, highly recommend it. So please honestly do push yourself to, if you're on this call and you weren't sure, or you just want to find out more information, like you should do it. Like this is your sign. I'm telling you now. Apply for something abroad. Just like go for it.
Thank you. That was very helpful. So I actually want to piggy off of what you mentioned about like adapting. If all four of you want to add on to this, this question is more about like the culture shock, because you're going to a new country and you probably don't know anyone. Do you have any tips for kind of adjusting to that new country, tips on handling that culture shock?
I think if you're the kind of person, personally, I love new experiences. So I've had moments where I've been homesick and missed my comforts and the things that I do on weekends and so forth. But overall, especially in the first week or so, I'm just kind of overwhelmed with excitement and then I kind of like settle down after that. But if you're the kind of person that likes comfort, what I would recommend is, there's loads of different ways of connecting with people from your home country in whatever location that you're in. So meetups, for example, there's so many events out there, so many communities out there that you can connect with. You can connect with US students in London. You can literally just type that in on Facebook and there's probably like hundreds of different Facebook groups and people connecting, posting about if anyone's going to be in the UK between 15th of May to 20th of May, and everyone's commenting. So there's definitely, so many people from your home country in a similar situation that would want to connect with you. And there's also apps as well for solo travelers that I recommend, because they, the entire point of the app is to connect you with people, and you can like just put in your preferences, your background and so forth, and they do the algorithm and connect you with people. So there's so much that you can do. Also connecting with host families as well. So if you wanted to stay with a host family, that's a great way to feel at home because it's like a family away from your home. So yeah, there's so many options out there.
I might just add as well, when you're in a different country, communication is absolutely key, because I'll just maybe start with a story, because my family is part Austrian and part Iranian. So whenever those two sides meet up, it's like World War III, because sometimes one of my relatives wants to compliment my German grandmother and she wanted to say, "Oh, you're so tall," but because the translation for that from Farsi to German is big, she accidentally called my grandmother fat, and my grandmother was so upset for the entire meeting. So I just want to say, whenever you are talking to someone, maybe just if they look upset, maybe just ask them what's up, because there's a potential that something might have been lost in translation and it can be easily sorted out. And otherwise, things that might be common sense in one country can again be different in others. So common sense is not global. Whatever you might have thought is normal or usual, that could be very different. So just keep an open mind and see how others navigate through their life. Observation and communication is really key. So
I would also just say, like, in terms of communication, like regular communication with home for me was really useful. So I had like phone calls with my parents like every weekend just for an hour, catch them up with anything exciting I did that week or anything new, or just kind of like finding out what was going on at home. Same with like chatting to friends, just kind of like consistently throughout the week. Obviously with like time differences, sometimes that was a bit challenging. If I was like, continuing a conversation over a couple of days, it would be, late responses and stuff. But it's totally doable if you plan that out. And it was definitely, I think for me, one of the best things was like getting care packages from home. I don't know if that's like possible for everyone, or there might be an international like supermarket or something where they have foods from home that just give you that sense of I don't know, like something little just to like make you feel a bit more at home in a different country. But yeah, those were helpful for me anyway.
Another great kind of type of opportunity that you could look into, especially if it's like your first time going abroad, you're not really feeling sure like you want to go, but you don't feel confident about going by yourself, which is what a lot of us have really been talking about. There are definitely opportunities for you to be able to travel with a group. Particularly if you're going through your university, a lot of university, like short-term summer, or if you have a winter session, summer or winter session study abroad programs will be with a group of students from your university. Certain opportunities, like I mentioned earlier, the Department of State has some programs and scholarships. One of them that's available for college students is called the Critical Language Scholarship. If you're interested in like a language immersion program, that it's a full scholarship, and you go with, it's not a group from your own university, but whoever else was accepted from any other state across the country. So you get that opportunity of like meeting other people who are passionate about whichever language you applied for, meeting new people from all across the country, but they are still from your own country. And so you kind of have that support network where you're going abroad, you're getting that international experience, but you also kind of have that home base at the same time, of people you're traveling with, studying with, and who are having probably the same experiences and struggles and difficulties as you. So if you want to go abroad, but you're feeling a little uncertain, looking into kind of some group travel opportunities is definitely a good way to go.
Thank you all. Thank you all for those amazing tips. So I actually, Rebecca, if you mentioned that there were some apps that you could recommend, perhaps if you could recommend those apps in the chat, if you can. And oh wait, Rebecca, you can go.
I was just about to say I'm going to type it on the chat.
Okay, yeah. And sorry, I'm really glad that you mentioned that language kind of story, because we have one question that talks about like not knowing a country's language, because I know like for many applying to a different country, if you don't, like, it's good to learn that country's language if you can, but I think for some who really want to visit another country, they don't know that language, and that is kind of like preventing them from kind of applying to study abroad.
Yeah, there are English speaking programs. So my sister, for example, she's studying in Italy, but she's doing a program which is where they speak English. So it's like an English institution within Italy, but she's also learning the language on the side. So that's a great thing to do, to also learn the language of the country. But there shouldn't be too many worries about. There's so many English speakers all over the world that you are about to find an English speaking school with an English speaking program. I mean, they even have them in Japan. So if you even want to go to Japan, I think the main universities there also have English alternative language courses, at least until you've learned their language. So.
Yeah. And a lot of places, especially universities that are trying to attract like international students, they will offer some introductory level classes to the local language, and say, okay, you're coming here, even if your program's in English, for you to like be able to get around, buy things at the grocery store, whatever it is, they'll have like some basic level classes in, German, Spanish, Japanese, whichever country you're in. And you can enroll in those and get kind of an idea of how to speak the local language, even if you don't need it for your studies.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. So we will be kind of running over the time a little. So if you have to leave early, it's fine. We have the recording that we'll send to you. So if you have to leave, that's completely fine. You can rewatch it later. So this question is for Soraya, because you mentioned, yeah, you've visited a lot of places. Could you talk about, like, out of all the places that you visited, what would you say is like the place that you've enjoyed being the most, staying there the most?
Oh gosh, I can't really place one country because they were all so incredible in different ways. So gosh, I'm sorry, I really wouldn't be able to. For example, I mean, Singapore was fantastic for its education and the opportunity to know so many people from different places, because Singapore really was a melting pot. Like, there was no such thing as a Singaporean. There was like a Malay Singaporean, a Chinese Singaporean, an Indian Singaporean. We had a lot of Israeli Singaporeans for some reason, but that was a really big community. But so that was really nice because I got to know a lot about different places. I mean, during that time, I even learned Korean drumming. Was a little bit out of whack, but otherwise, Austria was really nice because Austria has a really long, like, deep, steep tradition in different things, and that might be biased because I am Austrian and my father works for the Austrian government. So we, but and I mean, Denmark was cold, but it was really, really interesting as well, because although it was when I was younger, it was also very interesting just to get to know Scandinavia from the Danish perspective, because they do a lot of different things and they're very free when it comes to raising kids. Like, I think they would leave trolley, like the strollers with the kids outside while the parents were having food in the restaurant, because it was just that safe. And they said, okay, that way the kid grows very immune to the cold. Meanwhile, my mom was there zipping me up in 3 different jackets. So you learn so much about how people do different things, and it just really opens your mind to the different possibility. And the most important thing is it gives you choice. So when it comes down to making choices in life, you will no longer really be held back by the constraints of what you were taught in your own culture, but you will be able to make a choice, a better choice, a more kind of educated choice that is much more reliant on what you have learned, seeing how different people approach these. So I think that's a really good thing about traveling.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. This question is for Evangelista. What is the lead time between the time that you apply to the time that you're accepted to the time that you're working?
Oh boy, so that definitely depends on the organization. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not one of the 4 of us who has had a work experience abroad. I have studied abroad, I have volunteered abroad. But it's really going to depend a lot on the organization. I can give you an example from when I was applying to study abroad. The university I was applying to was very picky and very specific about how they wanted you to fill out the application. And so I filled out the application and, like, I forgot to put my middle name on it. So they sent it back to me and they were like, your name doesn't match your passport. Okay, so I added my middle name, and then they sent it back again. We can't open this document. Okay, I fixed the document and I sent it back again. So sometimes it can be a really long process, just because wherever you're applying is looking for something specific. Other times it might be a faster turnaround. I don't know if Soraya or Robin or Rebecca might have a more specific answer for you, but probably the best that I can do for you is it depends.
Yeah, I'm pretty much going to say the same thing. It really does depend on the organization or the institution. Some take longer than others. I think in general, the more that's at stake, the longer they take to respond. So if you're doing an exchange year, for example, the process is faster than if you were applying for a full undergrad abroad, for example. So that's full 4 years. So it really depends. But I think with exchange, because if you're doing the exchange anyway with a partner institution, in university has already spent that time to develop that relationship, so it makes it a lot easier and faster for yourself. So it really depends on, depends on the organization.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that explanation. Yeah, definitely it depends. I think it's definitely depending on where you apply to, but thank you. So we're gonna probably wrap up with 2 last questions. If you have any more questions that aren't answered, you can feel free to email our speakers. If for our speakers, you want to put your email in the chat maybe, or if we can also send it out to you through, if you register your email in Eventbrite. But this question is, what did you not expect from working abroad? Like if you could go back and like before you had traveled abroad, studied abroad, or worked abroad, what would you wish you had known earlier?
It's very different to studying. Like, at least for architecture, I remember I was working until sometimes 12 in the morning, but okay, most of the time at 8, not to scare off any potential people who want to study architecture. It's really fulfilling. But working is very different because I get to go home at 5:30 and it's great. It's so nice to have regular hours. But and you're collaborating more with people when you're working than if you're studying. So yeah.
I would say there's like a big one for me. So going to America and doing a student visa, I was only allowed to work a maximum of 20 hours a week, and it had to be an on-campus job. And like before I went, people were like, oh, like they usually cash if you can. And then I found a job and I was like, oh my God, amazing. But like the pay just wasn't worth the hassle that I had to go to, because I had to get a social security number. I had to go to the social security office and stand in a queue for like an hour. And then like doing like tax returns for like $15 a week. I was like, this is so not worth the effort. So if it, obviously coming, from the States to Europe, it might be a little bit different. It might be more approachable or easier. So, if you can fund it without having to work part-time for your exchange, I guess I would recommend that. But also I didn't realize how many forms I had to fill out. Like it was just document after document. And then like when I got to the US, I had to like check in with the like international services office to like confirm that I was like meeting all the visa requirements. And actually, yeah, I almost like what's the word? I almost like invalidated my visa or something because I applied for a job without checking with the international office first. And then they were like, oh my God, what have you done? Like, you might have like ruined your visa. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to get kicked out of the country. So just check what the visa says about working and if it's really worth it. And just be prepared to fill out a lot of documents. It's a small thing. It's just be aware.
And if you have any difficulty, please check with your embassy. Most likely to be there.
For me, it's not really something I wish I had known beforehand, but definitely something that I wish I would have I don't know, maybe thought more about or done a little bit differently, is like on one of my earlier trips, it was a short, like a summer language immersion thing. And so that, specifically for me, it kind of makes it a bigger deal. But I think just in general, I know we were talking about homesickness and how to find comfort and how to not feel so far away from home or something, but it's really important to find a balance between, having that support from people from your own country, but also putting yourself out there and meeting people from the host country. And especially if you're going for a language program like I was, it's really easy to fall into that rut of like, oh, I'm getting tired, you know, speaking Spanish or speaking Chinese or whatever it is, and I just want to go hang out with some Americans and speak English. It is really, really easy to feel that way. And then you'll get home and feel like you didn't learn anything. And so it's really important to, you know, get that language practice or build those relationships with local people or whatever it is that you're there to do, because otherwise it's very easy. I had a teacher in high school who she had spent like 2 years teaching in China, and she came back and the only words she knew were hello and beer. And that was like her entire experience of like, how did you spend 2 years abroad and you don't know anything about this country? And so it's very easy to kind of find yourself doing that, even subconsciously. And I've definitely done that before. So that's something very important, I think, to think about, is like, even though it can be nerve-wracking, you have to kind of try to get out of your comfort zone a little bit and meet new people and practice that language or whatever it is that your goal is for being there.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar as well. I think definitely language is something that I wish there's so many languages and it can feel hard, but even just kind of the simple phrases and words to help you get by can make so much of a difference, because I'm heavily reliant on Google Translate, way too reliant on it. So I think definitely like making an effort to learn more about the language. And it helps as well because you can kind of listen to other people's conversations and say, oh, okay, I know what they're talking about. So yeah, and also just staying for as long as you can, because there's been some trips that I've done that I wish I was there for longer, because I would have been more immersed in the environment and more immersed in the whole experience. Because I can't think of a single trip where I wish I didn't get the extra time to do something or visit a place or try something out. So there's always those kind of regrets, and you don't always get to go to the other side of the world. So when you're there, make sure you're making the most out that experience.
On another side of just going a little bit off of that. So before you also go to the country, just check the basic laws, because these can vary quite drastically. And as well, there's different kinds of crimes that are kind of happening from country to country. So in London, for example, you have to be very careful with your phone, because if you have it out while you're walking, there's going to be a motorcyclist who will just whiz by, take your phone, and you can say goodbye. You'll never see it again. Or in Austria or in Paris or Italy, there's a lot of pickpockets. Or in Singapore, there's different laws regarding drugs. So these are kind of things you might want to check up on before you go there, because the penalty can be a bit crap.
Yeah, thank you all for those amazing tips and advice again. So our last question before we wrap everything up is, if you could all just talk about one thing you enjoy most about the international experience.
I think definitely the people that you meet I love scrolling through my phone and looking at all the pictures. That's like one of the best parts for me. So yeah, definitely the people that you get to meet.
I would say the travel opportunities are like insane. I did a road trip around Texas. Where else did I go? Boston, New York. And like particularly if you're going to like Central Europe, like you can get a train to so many different countries, like everywhere is so accessible. So the travel was just like phenomenal. It was one of the reasons why I loved it so much.
Once you get to know the people, ask them where the restaurants are. Ask them where the food is, because the best thing I've done was befriend some Chinese people, and that was, of course, they also were fantastic. They're also fantastic people, but they showed me exactly where the restaurants in London were, and I ate like I was back in Singapore. So do check where these different places are that you can go eat.
I think I probably have to second Rebecca. For me, I've made not just friends, but like family in other parts of the world, which is so great. I've lived with a host family in China, and that I think was like 9 years ago now. I've been back to visit them twice. I'm still in touch with them. While I was abroad in China, my boyfriend is actually Costa Rican, but I met him in China while I was studying abroad. We've been together 4 years now, and so that like I have kind of literal family in Costa Rica now, and other friends that, you know, if I ever want to go to Thailand, if I ever want to go to Uzbekistan or Indonesia or the UK or like wherever I want to go, I have people there who are going to be friendly, familiar faces, and you know, I can ask them if I need help, or we can hang out together or whatever it is. And it's just this great feeling of like, the more like the first couple times you go abroad, you don't really know anyone, you don't really know anything. It's so nerve-wracking. And now I travel and I'm so confident because I know that almost anywhere I go, I'm gonna know somebody there or have somebody I can contact. And it's just this great feeling.
Can I just add to that real quick? And you can go anytime you want as well, because one of the biggest challenges, well, I face anyway with traveling with my friends in the UK, is that everyone has like specific dates and it can be difficult to figure out when works. But if you're going to visit people there, you can just go tomorrow and not care. It's great.
Love it. Well, thank you all so much to our speakers for taking time out of your busy schedule to speak with everyone here. And thank you everyone else for coming here and listening to our amazing speakers. I hope you enjoyed listening to them. And if you have any questions, they have an email that you can contact, and you can also contact CareerBound for if you would like to get like their socials or anything like that. And if you registered with the Eventbrite, we'll send out the recording for you to watch so you can rewatch and play any parts or anything like that. And yeah, just thank you all for coming today, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.